Hello, good evening from a very, very blustery, windy, gusty Durban, South Africa. And welcome to Psychic Talk with Priscilla Gendron. And back again for round number 754 is our wonderful, amazing co-conspirator, Mr. Leol Bonomo. And he's an international medium. And we are today going to be talking about his wonderful new book that is being launched. And we're looking at launch dates for next week when it's going to be hitting the streets. And it's called The Voice of Spirit, the Leslie Flint Transcripts with Recordings. So I would love to introduce you to Mr. Leol Bonomo. And I hand it over to you to just explain a bit about what's going to happen next week with this amazing book. Hi, Leo.
Hi, and thank you very much for the opportunity. This is a book that's been a long time in the making. I first sat with Leslie Flint in 1993 and was absolutely blown away by direct voice mediumship. And what that is essentially is that you can hear the voices in the room. And with Leslie, they were 6 or 7 inches below the ceiling. So it wasn't like trance where the voice will come from the medium. And sometimes in direct voice, it's very close to the medium or it comes through their own voice boxes. But with Leslie, it just appeared in the room. And there's a wonderful array of different people. My own personal favourites were those that were ordinary people, but there are some famous. And so I was so blown away by the experience of that I decided really to campaign for Leslie. And I've been doing that ever since. And Leslie passed in 1994. And Spirit gave me the idea. You know, you need to do a book, you need to get this together and that together. So it's been quite a long journey from, I suppose, really 2006 when I got in touch with the trust. So there are some wonderful stories that the spirits tell, and they speak about life in the afterlife. So this is very different from near-death experiences where, you know, we have a wonderful taste and then we return. And of course, these are people who have never returned. So they've got a great experience of it. And they're talking about life in the spheres, how they passed and where they found themselves. And I think one of the real comforting things from the books is not just a description of where they are and what they're engaged in, what they're doing, but the consistent fact of their passings were not painful. Whatever it might have been, whether it was a car accident or something like that, you know, we're taken from the body. And I think that's a very important aspect, to take that fear away from people, but also know that you've landed properly, you know.
Yes. It's also important to know that this book is very different in terms of the fact that these are trance mediumship, which is a little very different to normal mediumship in terms of like what we do for a living in general, where we communicate with our loved ones and the ones that have passed on, and we give messages from beyond. So this is a little bit more advanced, as we shall say, you know. So can you just maybe explain a bit more about what trance mediumship is as opposed to just normal mediumship?
Trance mediumship is when the spirit comes either very, very close, kind of intimately close and close with you, or actually takes over your body, and it needs permission to do that. And what happens is, and I've gone into trance myself several times, many times, and what happens is, as we give permission, we are shifted out of our body. So we're in a kind of no man's land, and the spirit inhabits the body and uses the body to speak, sometimes move around the room if it's very, very advanced. But they use the body for that short period of time to bring their messages. Leslie, as a point of fact, never went well, at the start he did, but he was never in trance. And this makes it, again, extremely unusual. So he would actually join in the conversations. And if Leslie was in the room, you could talk to him while the voices were going on. So it was completely independent.
And the fact that they are transcripts and recordings is even more amazing because, the proof is in the pudding, as they say. It's all very well to say, this is what I hear and this is what's coming through. But to actually physically hear the voices, it puts a whole different dimension on communicating with spirit.
It does. Because again, to hear a voice, and as you say quite correctly, we translate it, we repeat what's being said, but to hear the physical voice is so important because you get the inflections, you get the dialect. And one of those that comes through is actually a favourite of mine called Tucker. He was a gentleman of the road, as he described himself, but we know that to be a highwayman. But he wasn't a vicious thug, as so many of them were. But and he passed over in the 1700s. So you can hear the English of the 1700s spoken, as well as the dialect. And for me, that just brings history alive. It's like, wow, this isn't a history book. This isn't an actor putting on a voice of what we're supposed to think we hear. So
like straight from the horse's mouth, in a sense.
Literally straight from the horse's mouth. And if people from years ago that wouldn't have been recorded, maybe, too far back for that, you physically get to hear them speak. It's a whole new dimension, and quite often the wit comes through, even though it's just the voice. So there'll be a little inflection there, Oscar Wilde, he's there's a bit in the book about him, but there isn't a recording of him. But very, very witty guy. And he would just say something with a twist. And I've been in circle when he's come through. And everybody's just laughed because they know exactly what he means. So you get this recordings. Very tongue-in-cheek, very cheeky guy, but lovely. And of course, you get that with the recordings. It brings so much more to it.
Yes. And so, sort of going along as well in terms of where we are going with this book and where you're going with this book. I know that you're ready to launch it next week, and it's hitting the shelves and the stores and online sometime next week. I think from Monday onwards, there's going to be a lot of press and media about it. So I just wanted to say, congratulations on it, because it's been a long time coming. It's been many, many years coming for you.
It has, and the original launch date, believe it or not, was about 2 years ago. And Spirit called a halt to it, and I'm thinking, well, I'm just getting frustrated now. This is not happening, that's not happening. But it's been wonderful because in that 2 years, Spirit have added so much to it. So yes, there's a quite a big media campaign that's going out on Monday. The week after is when the book is launched officially, and it will first be officially launched from my site, and there's a link will be put on there, although you've got part of the site there. And if anyone wants to look at some of the beautiful reviews from my peers, absolutely beautiful. I'm sure people have heard of people like Robin Foy of the Skull Experiment. He's done a wonderful review. Stuart Alexander, another well-known physical medium. I mean, what Stuart hasn't done isn't worth covering as far as physical mediumship is concerned. He's done a lovely review. So there are lots of brilliant reviews from experienced people, and they appreciate the work, and I'm very humbled by that. So there's a great energy behind this, And the idea was to have the transcripts, because some of the dialects are quite difficult and you need an ear for them. Especially Tucker, from hundreds of years ago. It's not quite what you expect, and then when you sense. But yeah, so the reviews are great, and then the book is going on sale, and within the pages of the book there's a download link, so you can go to the site and you can download these, and there's something to treasure. And there's something else that I've done with the book as well. At least the first 500, it may be more. They're going to be personally signed, and they're going to be personally numbered as well, so that they will become collector's items. So hopefully that's a little inducement to get the book.
So I thought that it might be nice to sort of have a little chat about some of the wonderful and colorful characters in the book, because we have a plethora of them. And we decided to choose one particular one who everybody in the world should know about, and that's Sir Winston Churchill.
Yeah, well, he was a very, very interesting character. He was involved in the Boer War, and if you look at his own books, when he writes about his early life, he speaks about his psychic experiences, and he also admits, and in the recording going with the book, he admits that he sat with mediums, but he also admitted that in his position he couldn't really make it well known. And I guess in this industry, we all know why, you get slated and ridiculed and that. So you can understand that. But he comes through quite forcefully to talk about some of his experiences and how wonderful it is that that particular group came together, and the opportunity for him to speak through the group. There's another interesting twist, and that was many, many years ago. I went into trance and Churchill came through, and normally there is always a link, with the person. So if you get a message for someone, there's always a link with that person. And for the life of me, I couldn't think of any link at all. And again, in this 2-year delay, in fact, probably just about a year ago, my cousin told me about a medium called Malcolm Green, very well known in his time.
Yeah, because he wrote the book, The Telephone Between Worlds, isn't it?
I think that was actually somebody else, but he wrote a book. I can't think of the title now. One of those things. And so he was a very, very good friend of the family. Yes. And he was also a physical medium, and Churchill used to manifest at his seance. And what I also learned was that he was a personal friend of Winston Churchill for over 30 years. And that kind of took me back. That was a link through the family. And I think that's interesting, again, from a mediumship point of view, because sometimes, we give messages and the people are not understood and it doesn't come through immediately. And for me, really, I suppose when he first manifested, it would have been a good 15 years for that link to come right. So that's very interesting.
Yeah. I know there was a little excerpt that you sent me, and it says, Winston knocked at the door of a miner who, on learning the name of his unexpected guest, shook the hand of Winston, saying, "Thank God you have come here. It's the only house for 20 miles where you would not have been handed over." Winston recalled that his actions were the same subconscious memory as when he had used the planchette in earlier years.
Absolutely. Again, he was impressed by spirit. He was in a prisoner of war camp in the Boer War, and spirit kept impressing him. You've got to escape. You've got to make your escape. And he was asking for guidance. So he was told the right time and how to get out of the camp. And he found himself outside the camp. and was guided directly by spirit to this house in a town. Again, the only place out of hundreds of houses that wouldn't turn him over. And for me, that not only shows the huge trust that Churchill had in his gift and in spirit to keep him safe, but you can see, so often we're not aware of the planning of spirit. And for him to get that and to then become prime minister, definitely a wartime prime minister, I think peacetime, very, very different man. But spirit knew that he had to be there for Britain at that time. And for him to have the faith and the connection to make that escape, find his way there and get back so that he could become prime minister, I think is a wonderful lesson for all of us, because it shows that, we all have a path. We may not know what it is. And sometimes, it'll seemingly take us off road. But there's a plan to our lives. And I think that's a wonderful example of that.
Definitely. And the thing is that, it also gives us a different view of how we see history and how history is actually portrayed and written in books, because it's not second, third, fourth, fifth hand account. It's like, as we said before, straight from the horse's mouth. And it also gives you that different aspect of what he was like as a person.
Absolutely. There's a saying, isn't there, that war is written, history is written by the victors. And one of the interesting things that I found decades ago was that there are things in spirit where they have plays, historical plays, but you'll get the actual characters playing themselves. So, for example, if it's a play about Cleopatra, she would physically be there, but the truth would be told. It wouldn't be, what the Romans wrote about her, and it would be the actual history itself. And those plays are very, very popular in spirit. And I, for one, can't wait to get over and just watch some of those, the real history. There's the twins in the tower, wasn't there? We've never really known what's happened to them. I mean, we know they were murdered, but plays like that would expose the true history, and I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, definitely, because it just feels like a lot of things were hidden from people. So this helps us to bring everything to light and bring it forward.
Absolutely.
So in terms of the book, I know we've spoken about Sir Winston Churchill and Tucker. What other sort of characters can we find or is hidden in the writings of the book?
Well, there's a short recording of Queen Victoria, and she comes through, and I think it's a very sobering message, because she isn't recognised at first, and then a lady, I think it's Betty Green, she says, "Oh, is that Queen Victoria?" And she says, "Victoria, Queen no longer." And it's a great leveller. And you think sometimes of these very ego-struck stars or ego-struck dictators and that, and billionaires, and they think they're going to go over and have all that money or whatever it might be, that power, that luxury that they're used to, and they will be just like you and I. Whatever the status was, it doesn't matter. You're a soul, and that's what's dealt with. So that's very interesting. And the story of Queen Victoria is very interesting, because she comes along with, she's very insistent. She underlines the word, her medium, John Brown. And if we know anything of the film Mrs. Brown, Billy Connolly played John Brown. And there's a very mixed up version there. But what actually happened was John Brown was a medium in real life, and he facilitated messages from Albert to her. and they went on for a long time.
That's why she had such a close relationship with him.
Exactly. And she eventually had 16 handwritten diaries of all the seances. And Parliament was starting to get very fidgety because she was coming up with information given by Albert about what was actually going on in the country. So she was starting to ask awkward questions. And people realised that John Brown was a medium. This is where the information was coming. So they tried to slander him and destroy him. And in fact, when Queen Victoria died, the government of the day, I think it was Disraeli, he had her private offices broken into and the diaries were burnt. They were so scared of her speaking out and saying, actually, this exists. And this is something that Churchill underlined. You know, in his position, he couldn't afford to do that because everything may have been lost. But it's a very sobering thought, and it's something that has followed us through history. You know, when you have people like Crookes, the great scientist that was proving life after death, you know, and his reputation was ruined. Children know nothing of people like Crookes. So there was a great need to be careful. But she comes through, and again, it's very sobering that you know, we're just souls when we get there. Whatever image we may have of ourselves or whatever we may have got used to, you know, we are a soul. We are ordinary. Another great gentleman is a gentleman called Wagstaff, and he's interesting for various reasons. He was a South Londoner. A lot of the places he speaks about I've been to and know quite well. But he has a little speech about vivisection. And he talks about the harm that it does, how the animals pass over, absolutely devastated, no trust in humans at all, which is, I suppose, what we expect. But he also talks about the vivisectionists' actions and how that perpetrates different things, but also how it affects them, not just in life, but when they get over. Because it's quite a bad thing, you know, to abuse animals like that. But his sister was also very, very religious, and when she passed over, she was in a realm, if you like, of people that are very, very religious. And her expectation was that at some point she was going to hear the trumpet call and all her bones would get together and somehow regain flesh, and she was going to come out of the grave. And being so religious, she couldn't get that out of her mind. So that's kind of what she was waiting for. And Wagstaff doesn't really agree with that, and he wasn't particularly religious when he was on Earth, but he can see, in a sense, where she is and how that image is wrong. But it also proves that if we get over with a very strong, stubborn mind, whatever direction that goes, it can cause us problems. And that's one of the reasons that mediumship is so important, because if you have that little crack of light, no matter how small, spirit will exploit that when we get over. And so if we have a stubborn mind, but we've heard something about mediumship, they can use that to bring us out of that particular world. So with Wagstaff, there's a lot of serious life and spiritual lessons to learn, and that's just one character.
Yes. And, you know, the thing is that you actually spend time with Leslie.
Yeah, I sat with him. I was very privileged. I thought it was just friends being kind. Leslie's a lovely man, and his partner, a lovely man as well. And so I just thought that was it. And I was just happy to be there. not get a message, just be in awe, really. And I was blown away because Mickey spoke to me first, and he started to talk about different things. And this is something I'm very sort of firm with. Everything is known in spirit, whether the communicator is told and whether they're allowed to tell you to pass on is a completely different thing. And so he was getting rather near the knuckle with something, and you can hear him turn away, and he whispers, and then he turned back to me and said, not sure. And then he turned back again. He said, I don't think I can say that. And it's later transpired that the whole reason I was brought there by spirit, was asked for, was because of this book and the good that it will do for spiritualism. So Mickey obviously knew what the whole deal was, but as he was getting near the knuckle, he was obviously pulled back and saying, you can't tell him, because
he's got to come to
it. I may have just gone nuts and thought, right, that is my life, and then I wouldn't have had all the other experiences in between.
So Darcy put a question in, and she said, did he bring anyone from your family through?
He didn't. I honestly wasn't expecting anything, as I say, and I realised that the whole purpose was to get me there, to experience it, and to be so amazed that I would do something about it in time. So it wasn't that kind of thing, Darcy. It wasn't like, here's your mum, that kind of thing. And I really didn't mind. To be honest, if I just sat there and didn't get any message at all, I would have been blissfully happy.
You're kind of like almost just sitting in awe of listening to everything that's transpiring and all the messages from spirit.
Yeah, I was just blown away, very childlike, oh my God, listen to that. Because you could hear, even though we were in effectively the attic of his room, of his house. Which doctor was that now? I can't think. There's a doctor, but he was walking. I could see him clairvoyantly with his hands behind his back, and in spirit, he was kind of walking along, and you could actually hear the footsteps walking diagonally across what was the roof. It's a total sensory experience, and again, the nice thing is you don't have to be mediumistic. You don't have to have any skills. The voices can sometimes be very loud, almost as though they're amplified,
Yes. Like they've got hold of the karaoke machine and
absolutely
taking over kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe we would just give some time to ask anybody if they wanted to ask any questions, if they wanted to just put it into the chat box, ask you any questions about the book or about anything in particular, because you know what people are like when they get two mediums together. They always want to know about themselves. Which is always the case. So if anybody would like to put a comment in the chat box, and we'll get Leo and myself to answer the questions. And so when's the next book, Leo? Because I know this one is just out, but you've got some more stuff brewing, haven't you?
Yeah. Again, there's no time in spirit, and time sometimes can go very quickly here. So I wrote a book about 7 years ago on developing mediumship using the new energies. And there were questions at times from some very qualified people, what new energies are you talking about? But they've now transpired. So the book needs revision. It's more or less completed, so that will follow fairly quickly. I've had lots and lots of requests over the last few years to get the book out. People want to buy it because they want to develop, so that's coming out. But the other thing is that this book, The Voice of Spirit, is the first in a series of books. And so there are more translations and more recordings to come.
So you're looking at a trilogy, are you?
Well, a spirit. So, funny enough, spirit today. I was talking about this, and I was going to say a couple, and 6 came out. So, so they've obviously got plans for a lot.
Yeah, they've got plans for you.
Yeah. But if it takes this long, I'll be 100 before the next one comes out.
Yeah, because it's a lot of hard work, to transcribe it all and to write it all.
Yeah, it's unbelievably difficult because you may get a 20-minute recording, but it can take you 2 or 3 hours just to do that small snippet. And in this book there are 24 recordings, and sometimes the accent. There's a South American lady called Bessie, and she was a slave in Alabama, and
Yes.
for me her accent was undecipherable. I mean, that took weeks and weeks and weeks, and it's just a short thing. So it is a lot of hard work to get it right. It's a verbatim transcript, so there are times there, and I wasn't sure whether it was Leslie's dog or a spirit dog, but there's a dog that barking.
Wow.
And so it's got, whatever they're saying, and then it's got dog barks or chair creaks, because it's verbatim. And so you have to listen very carefully for all of that. So the accent's part of it, but just getting the thing down is incredibly difficult. It takes a long time.
Yeah, and it's just so fascinating, because I think that, over the years, and I think probably over the last 5 years, it's become more of a norm for people like us to be okay to be out in public, as they say, not be ridiculed and burnt at the stake.
Yeah. For many years, if anybody asked me what I was doing, I told them I was a counsellor and involved in counselling. But as it's become more the norm to admit what we do, that has been, I would say, a relief in a sense. Not that it really bothered me, but it's a thing that precipitates other actions. So the more people that talk about this, especially on the web, they feel that they're part of a group. They're not abnormal. And you consequently, I've spoken to people in hospitals and doctors' surgeries that work with the doctor, and they've spoken about doing Reiki, and they're healers. And I walked into a surgery, and the lady said, "I know you," and I'm thinking, what do I do now? And she said, "I saw you at Woodford Church. You're a medium. I do Reiki." So, oh, thank God for that.
What did I do? What trouble am I in now?
She might fiddle with the pills, some arsenic or something. And so again, it's very popular, and people feel at ease, and of course that helps the movement to grow.
Yes. No, definitely it does. And just in general, when we are doing mediumship, and I know we both have a very different style in things, and it's important for people to know that we come to the answers in a different way, but we still come to the answers in the way that we receive it from spirit.
Yeah, I think everyone works differently, and I suppose a good analogy, I'm just being told, is if you paint or you're a painter, you can follow a particular style, but it's still very distinctive. Your painting is your painting. It's the way that you do it, and I think that really applies to mediumship. So in that sense, I think there's no wrong or right way. It's just whatever is natural for us. And I think one of the things that people perhaps don't understand so much is that our guides are very close to us. They have lived similar lives. They have had similar problems, whether it's problems with, smoking, or whatever it might be. They might have particular weaknesses, stress-wise or whatever. So they're very similar to us. And that is of great help because they understand what we're going through, that particular weakness or that particular strength. But they have to bond with us very, very closely. And so I suppose the phrase that's been given to me is it's kind of twinning. So the individual collaboration between us and the way we work in our particular quirks and foibles is very similar to the guide, and so we are all completely different, and that's a wonderful thing. I think it'd be a shame if everything was regimented and you could say, right, he's from that school,
copy paste, copy paste.
Copy paste, yeah, absolutely. Hi, Susan.
Susan's here. She's joined us. We've got some wonderful people with us tonight. And Linda wanted to ask a question. So, Linda, just since working from home, I have renewed energy. So, is this a good move? And any spirit message for South Africa? So, it's a two-parter, really.
Yeah.
Oh.
That sometimes happens when spirit moves in very close, and I love that shiver, that cold feeling. I think it's a really good move for you, Linda, to work from home. I think working from home, it depends on where you worked in an office because they can be very strenuous places. They can be very confined conditions, and I think for you absolutely it's a great thing to work from home. The other thing is when we're interacting with people, sometimes it's not all good energies, and so we find ourselves closing down because we're being intruded upon, and the stresses not only of personalities but physical energy with people can be very draining. So I know for you personally, it's been a great thing that you're not. The phrase being given to me is you're not being interrupted by other associations with people. So I think it's good. You have to make up your own choice, of course, because spirit can't take that away. And as far as South Africa is concerned, what I'm being told is that there is still a fair amount of turmoil there. There is settlement, and the way that it's been described to me is it's like an earthquake, and then you get the afterquakes. And I think there's still maybe an earthquake to come, and it's perhaps not as serious as that may sound. I think it is just literally shaking things up. But you'll get the after tremors as well. But it's something that's needed. Spirit often say to make a move forward, to go forward, there has to be disruption. Because if you're trying to hold on with the environment that you've got and move forward, you can't shake that off. So sometimes it's a tough thing, but I know that there are some problems which need to be resolved, and perhaps not in a nice way, but I feel overall the future for South Africa is good, because again, as that energy changes and subsides, it'll help to bring other people forward. I may digress a little, but I was questioning spirit about wars many years ago, and what's the point, and people are killing each other, and surely that's against God's will. But the answer came back that really surprised me, because it said it gives people a chance if they're going to sacrifice their lives to save others. That's a worthwhile thing. If they're giving their lives in various ways, that's not necessarily a bad thing. And so it gives people a chance to make those choices more of a spiritual nature, really, than just an immediate physical or mental reaction. And what we've had in the last few years, when we look at the invasion of Iraq and things like that, in the past, we have, because of all the, what's the word again? because of all the politicizing, and for example, with Germany, Germany's the devil and the people are the devil, and it's the whole nation that's evil. And of course, they said the same things about us. But with the Iraq War, we got to see that those people were exactly like us. And so what happens is there's a great outpouring of love and light. And it wasn't really the answer that I was expecting. I'm sorry if I've gone on a little bit there, but sometimes I get into the flow. But so it's not always necessarily how we view it from an earth point of view. Sometimes change needs a shake-up.
Yes.
And that's what it is.
Definitely. Well, Susan's got a long-winded one. So says, please speak to what I require in my highest and best. What am I not aware of or unwilling to acknowledge that would change everything for me, increasing my level of abundance?
I think, Susan, that you're in a position at the moment where you are moving forward. I know lots of mediums say this, and it's not something I'm fond of saying, but it's experience. It's something you need to go through. Now, that is very true. But again, I feel I'm being taken back 3 or 4 years, and graphs being drawn, and it's very disruptive. And I think before those 3.5 years, I think there was all that disruption. I know things are slowing down for you now, and I know that things have been shook up a little bit. But again, it's to kind of get rid of the remnants. You've learned an awful lot in your life in the last 3 or 4 years. It's a gentleman that's here. He says, what you have been doing is exemplary. You shouldn't look at when things are apparently not going right, that there is a cause behind them that originates from yourself. In other words, that you're not doing something right. And he's saying you are at the moment in a place where you are reaching forward. I'm being reminded of something, and I know that you've said this about a relationship not working out, but he says you have actually learned a lot from that. There is a relationship coming forward for you, but there is a little rest in between. I feel that you're going to be extremely busy. And so sometimes these things have to be hidden. And the reason that they're hidden is we have to chance upon them ourselves, or put experience together to make that discovery. So it's never really hidden from us against our benefit. It's just that there is a time and a purpose that is right for that. And that's where you are. Uncle, I've got a moustache with this gentleman. He's like me. He's got a bit of weight on his face. Would that make sense to you? Quite a tall man. I wouldn't say he's laughing now. I wouldn't say he's the best dressed gentleman, and he's laughing at that. So does that make sense to you, Susan?
We'll have to wait for her to reply.
Yeah.
And while we're doing that, Linda says, thank you, Leo. Excellent confirmation of my own feelings.
Oh, bless you. And I can see Susan said, grandfather. Oh, boy. Wow. Yeah. Yes. Oh, bless you. Bless you. Quite often we have a feeling that, well, nothing's going right. What have I done wrong? Why isn't God sorting this out for me? As an old friend of mine went through a period of saying, again, it's another kind of common thing to say, but it is a test. We appreciate them more in spirit when we can understand what's going on. But for you, he says for you to look at this as a refining. He's actually showing me a pencil being sharpened to a very fine point. And he's showing me the old-fashioned pencil sharpeners. If I said, Susan, that I don't think he was an artist, but I know that he was good with facts and figures, and perhaps had a thing about keeping sharp pencils. I've asked him whether he drew or not. He said not really. So I know this is more of a technical thing, but that makes sense because he's trying to give that to you again as a bit of confirmation. Right. Okay. So thank you. So the direction is just to keep going forward. It's going to open up for you. He's just said between February and March next year, you will see clearly the direction that you're going in. Things are going to open up for you wonderfully.
Yeah, it kind of feels like the slate is wiped clean, and by February next year, there just seems to be
absolutely
brand new, you know.
Yeah, I can't swear to this, Susan, but he said we shall meet soon, and I was asking what he meant by that, but he actually meant myself and you. So apparently, I'm in the States next year. We'll wait and see.
Okay, and Darcy wanted to know if her grandmother was around at all.
Absolutely. Now, grandmother, I've read for Darcy before, and her grandmother is a real character, bless her. There is a shift within you spiritually, she's saying, and she says it's been an interesting few weeks, the last few weeks that have passed. It's almost as though you've you know that game when you're children, somebody spins you around and then you're not quite sure where you are. And I've got that feeling of finding a direction and not being quite right, and then being spun again and finding another direction. You're finding your way through. It's almost like a little maze. There's going to be great changes for you. She's actually written October for you, but I know going into November as well, there are going to be changes for you. She says there are hopes and dreams that you've had for some time that need to be explored. This includes moving, and she's showing me 2 houses. So I know next year that move is going to be made possible. She understands, perhaps from your point of view, nothing could be further from the truth. You know, that there's no way to manage it, but she says that the move will finally come for you. And would it make sense if we say that has been the last couple of years? It's been almost, and just not getting there. Oh, it is. Yes. Sorry. You need to stand your ground, Darcy. You have to stand your ground. I'm not sure what's going on, but I feel that there's lots of pushing, and I don't mean physically. I don't think it's that way, but there seems to be lots of energetic buffering around you. I know from what she's saying that you have a job. I know it felt right when you started it, but there's still what she calls a little bit of agitation around there. I think the agitation is more within yourself. She says you don't feel as though you're being fulfilled. I've asked whether you are appreciated there. She says you are, but there's an itching to move on and to move further. And to move further away. So she's actually taken me about 60 miles away to where there's another town. And if we look at a clock, and you're at the center of the clock, and 12 o'clock is north. So I'm looking around 2 o'clock, and I want to go in that direction. She says there's a town there about 60 miles away. She said you will find some relief there. I think that you'll be able to find a job. I've asked whether that's in connection with the move that's coming up. She says the two are not connected, but as you move, you'll find that you will be closer to that town. There seems to be a great relief in moving away from where you are. And she says it isn't just the place, it's the people. Lovely as they are, you need a fresh environment. And I think this is where you're going to find someone. So would that make sense, Darcy?
Yeah, I resonate with that as well, Leo. It just comes up that, there is changes, and I think the changes need to happen for her to sort of really take the transformation for her own life.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, so Ashley is on. Hi, Ashley. Hello, Priscilla and Leo. I have a question. Some positive changes started happening and it came to a halt for now. Is this a test for me to go in this direction or change the direction?
Bless you, Ashley. This is definitely an incentive for you to go in the same direction. As we all know, there's no time in spirit. Certainly nothing that we would recognise as time, but timing is very important. And I know it's got you on this road. This is a lady that's there. She says getting you on the right road has really taken time for you to feel comfortable and safe in a new environment. So hopefully that makes sense to you. But she says, so you've made some progress along that road. It hasn't stopped. It's merely paused a little because the timing needs to change. She's written December for me. So I know as we go through to the 15th of December, I know that things are going to improve for you. As I asked for a confirmation, she says, this December or Christmas is going to be much better for you. I know we've had all the nonsense with COVID, but I don't think it was COVID that actually made a bad Christmas for you last year. So hopefully that makes sense as well.
Yeah, I get that. Also confirmation, December is going to end off on a high note for, going into 2022, it's going to be really good.
Yeah. I think, sorry, go on.
Yeah. No, carry on.
I think sometimes, we become over aware and oversensitive of things. And as soon as we reach a stop, we tend to think, oh, God's got it in for me, or what have I done wrong? And it's not necessarily that. It's just, my guy's just saying, well, it's like if you go for a very fast paced walk, you get to a point if you're not fit. Well, you need to just pause and take a breath in. And that's what it is, really. The vaccines.
Jalinda wants to know about the mandatory vaccines. What are your thoughts on it, or what are Spirit's thoughts on it? Maybe
the thoughts that Spirits have given, to be 100% honest with you, is that this is something that man has invested in. It's something that man wants to do, and he will carry it out. So it's not, in that sense, something that Spirit's allowed to happen, or Spirit planned, eons ago and said, right, that's going to happen there. This is all man's doing. It is COVID-19 is something manufactured, and it's something that has been introduced. It's another way of control. The vaccines are a way of enforcing that control. So really what he's saying is, it is our choice whether we take the vaccine or not. Spirit are not going to advise on that. Again, that's a personal choice. They can't take that away. But it's something that, as the world's changing, it is going to be difficult to perhaps not have the vaccine, because man's purely going to put blocks into place that, well, if you don't want it, that's fine, that's your choice, but you can't take a plane, you can't go elsewhere. So it is a personal choice. Personally, I don't think it's a great thing, but we also have to be aware of loved ones, and because we could always introduce that in and cause suffering to another. It's a moral dilemma. I don't really like them very much. Bless you, Ashley.
Okay, and then Vanessa follows it up. Leo, COVID 2X. How many lives do I have? Wow. My purpose is project driven. Spirit flows by our family. 60 this month. Life advice. So she's had it twice, and she had it at the very beginning of the pandemic. She's had it again this year.
Well, I think the best thing to say about that is that you've survived it. There's an old saying, very true. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger. So I do think that that's absolutely correct. We are far too clean in this life. If you go back, 60 years when I was a boy, We had a saying, a little dirt never hurt, and there were germs everywhere. It made us stronger. So I think there's that balance to life. How many lives do we have? I don't know if you watched my show on KCOR, but I had a lovely, lovely friend, Sarah Tyler Waters, and her guide came through, and he'd had over 18,000 lives. Now, that may be slightly excessive, but there is no limit. It's what we can learn and how many times we personally want to come back. There is a flip side to that as well, because what people are generally talking about is how many lives have we had here on Earth? There are other planets. There are other civilizations. So it's a process of never-ending learning. I think it's as much our choice of how much we want to learn. What we learn here in a fairly short lifetime would take us perhaps hundreds of years in spirit. But there is a limit to what we can do here. So who knows? Is it project driven? Well, you've certainly got a purpose here. We all have. Sometimes it's rather grand, to be President of the United States, and sometimes it's just fighting your way through life and doing the right things. So the purpose can sometimes be hard to decipher. It wouldn't be something really that we could do here, because it can be a lot more personal. If you haven't been vaccinated yet, I think if you're okay with that, I think that's great. Life advice: just keep going. There is so much more to life that we can enjoy, and if we have the mindset, we can always find a little gem and something to enliven us. So enjoy life while you're here. Even people won't live to 120, very rare, but if you live to that, it's too short. You go home. So just keep doing what you're doing. You're obviously doing something right, honey.
She is an amazing woman, and she has just got a heart of gold. So yeah, she just is. She deserves to have all the abundance that life gives her.
Absolutely, and it's not always
you say that about it doesn't kill you, make you stronger.
Yeah, and it's not always about money. You can find people living very, very simply, and they haven't got very much, but what they've got is happiness and love, and that's enough. We're too materialistically angled, and part of that is advertisements and that, and people flaunting wealth. And I was reading, I can't remember which country it is. It might have been in Nepal, near India. Very, very poor country, no televisions or anything, and it was rated the happiest place in the world to be.
Yes.
Because they just had freedom and a nice, they worked for a living, obviously, but they had a nice, easy life.
And that nothing was clouded. They didn't have anything that was clouding them and their judgments.
Yeah, and the thing I found fascinating was no TV.
Yes.
And that includes all the bad news and the negative vibes and that. But also, we have programs over here like EastEnders, and they're a miserable lot.
I know.
There's a murder or a theft or an argument going on, and that's not like EastEnders at all, really. But but it infects us, doesn't it? So I think not having TV is wonderful, probably.
Yeah. So Modi Lai wants to know any guidance from spirit when one feels a little impatient or uncertain.
My guy's just made me laugh because I just had a thought and he's echoed it. This is not going to help you very much, Mo. If you're impatient, try and be patient. If you're uncertain, then open to spirit and ask for guidance. We don't listen enough to our own soul. It resides in the stomach. I know a lot of people say the heart or the head. It's where the sacral chakra is, and the stomach, and it's commonly known as the gut. And there's a saying, follow your gut feeling, and that's what you need to do. You need to ask your soul. If you embrace your stomach, you see pictures of Buddha and other people, and they're cradling their stomach and they're sending love to it and they're communicating with their soul, and that's something that we can all do and listen to it. you'll get the best advice there. Honestly, once you learn how to connect, it's wonderful.
It's also stepping into life with gratitude. I think that's important.
Absolutely, absolutely. Oh, bless you, Acton.
Yeah, that was Vanessa. She's
Oh, Vanessa. I thought it wasn't Acton, but I thought I got to call her something. Bless her. Bless you, Vanessa.
And then Modi says, agree. Yeah, I agree. I think my impatience leads to the uncertainty. That's it.
Yeah, because we're always trying to second guess, aren't we? You know, and then we're never happy because whatever we've second guessed, we always think we would have done something else and it doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you know, the two of us, we can chat until the cows come home.
Absolutely. And it's lovely to have all these people to connect with as well.
It is amazing, and I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. So, you know, we're going to just be closing off. So to just recap, Leo's book is out next week, The Voice of Spirit, the Leslie Flint transcript with the recordings. And if anybody would like to get a copy, they can just go to his website, or if anybody wants to connect with Leo and possibly have a reading or a session with him, just email him at info@leo-bonomo.com, or just go to his website, and his book is on sale there, so you can get your copy. And I think it's also in other places as well, but the easiest one is to go to his website and pick up a copy there.
Absolutely. And if, sorry, Priscilla, and if you order early, you'll get a signed copy, but you'll also get a numbered copy. So it hopefully will become a collector's item. So something to treasure. And when you've done with it, you know, eBay it.
eBay it and sell it for millions.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, Leo, as always, it's a pleasure to have you with us on Psychic Talk. And I just wanted to thank you so much for joining us tonight. And also to send you abundance and blessings for your book. And we know that this is not the last time you'll be with us. You know, it's going to be number 800 next week.
It's always a pleasure. I'm really humbled and grateful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much for joining us. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. And Linda says, thank you. Lots of love to you both. Thank you very much, everybody. And we'll chat soon. And Ashley as well. Thank you both. Blessings. So it's goodbye from me. And it's a goodbye from Leo. The spirit is calling. Good night, everybody.
Good night. God bless.
Good night.